Starting a brand new series that fits right along with Easter called iLife. And as we start it, what I want you to think about today is this, I want you to think about what are your life goals? Maybe you haven't had time to think about that in a while, but I'd like you just to take a minute to go, what am I trying to accomplish with my life? What are you spending your one and only life on? And I can give you a couple of suggestions. Maybe there's things like, hey, I want to invest my life in retirement. Anybody going, hey man, I can see retirement and I'm investing my money that one day I don't have to work and I can finally stop and really enjoy life. Anybody feel like that? Like your job is just so difficult and you just look forward to that day that you don't have to do that anymore. And that would be awesome, and that's not a bad goal. None of these goals are bad. The second one is maybe accomplishment, that hey, if I could make a difference in this world, that's a really good one. That if I could be a person that could leave a legacy that would change the world, that's what I really want to invest my life in. Or maybe like some of us, it's, hey, all I want to do is just get the kids out of the house. That's just my number one. I'm just playing. Right? That's a good goal. It's doable. No, it's really not, right? I mean, then they come back with kids and stuff like that. But anyway, you get the idea. So maybe your goal is relationships. That you go, hey, I've kind of learned that, to be honest, that if I invest in other things, they're not going to last as long as my family does. So what's the most important thing in my life is my relationships. And so we're going to take a look at our iLife, what's missing in this equation. And so today we're going to take a look at God's Word, and we're going to figure out what's the problem. Is there a problem? And we're going to take a look at what I believe that the problem is in our lives, and even our goals. There's something that's missing. And for some of us, you maybe have come to the realization and you've become very frustrated in life. And today we're going to talk about the problem, and we're going to talk about the solution, and what does that have to do with Easter Sunday? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So today we're going to look at the book of John. So if you have your Bibles or your Bible apps or just on your handout, we've given you lots of it. We're going to look at John chapter 11. If you've never had the opportunity to start reading the Bible, or you don't have a reading plan, we read the Bible together, one chapter a day, and we'd like to invite you because we're starting with a great book of the Bible, and it's called John, and I like it because my name is John. So anyway, we'd be super glad for you to start there. I did not write this book, so please don't think that. John chapter 11 is where I want us to pick up, but we read one chapter a day, and we actually have a message about how to journal, and that's all on the back of your handout, and you can check that out for yourself if you'd like to start with us. A great passage of Scripture to read. But we're going to skip to chapter 11, and here's what it says. It says, now a man named Lazarus was sick, and he was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. They were all brothers and sisters. This Mary, whose brother's name was Lazarus, now lay sick, and was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his hair she wiped his feet with her hair. I'll just pause there just to say it's describing a story that happened with Mary, and if you read the book of John, then you'll find out all about that. Okay, verse 3. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. And I'll pause there. So Mary, Martha, and Lazarus was a family that Jesus knew personally. Now, he's God, so he knows everyone. But Jesus, when he had started his earthly ministry about 2,000 years ago, before going to the cross, he spent some time with many people, and he went around healing people. And he's about in year 3 of his ministry. So he's looking forward. Most of the people didn't realize it. He was looking forward to the cross and his death. They didn't realize that. And so, but he actually had some personal friends, and his friends were Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Whenever he got a chance, he would go there and just hang out with them. And you can read about that. It's pretty awesome, the relationship that they had. So he was actually touring because it was kind of like wherever Jesus went, lots of people came. They would bring their sick relatives, and he would heal them. And so it was a pretty neat thing. And so these are people that were his friends, and they were kind of like, hey, could you take time to come because Lazarus is really sick. In fact, he's going to die, so we need you to come and heal him, basically is what they're saying. Okay, verse 4. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. This is kind of, if you're an English person, this would be the thesis. This would be something that you would look at and you'd say, hey, you don't want to forget this verse, because Jesus is describing about the events that are going to take place next, and they're confusing. They're going to be confusing what occurs and how he goes about it. But he's explaining why he allows what he allows in the next few verses. And so I don't want you to forget this verse. Okay, verse 5. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister Mary and Lazarus. That meant he had a personal relationship with them. Verse 6. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. That's where I want to pause. This is where the story kind of takes a twist that's weird. We just said, and Jesus stated in his own words, he loved them, meaning it's not that he doesn't love everybody, but he had a special relationship with these people. He had just went through a healing tour where he healed tons of people. And so when he got the word that Lazarus was sick to death, unto death, it's kind of weird that his response was he delayed for 2 days. And I have a feeling there's some people here today that you might be equally confused by your life. You may be equally confused as to what God is doing in your life and in this world. And we're going to come back to that, but I just want you to see what he did. Okay, verse 7. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. And then he describes for them, after waiting 2 days, he says, hey, we need to go see Lazarus and them, and you can read about it later for yourself. But he gets into this thing where he says, Lazarus is sleeping, and they're like, we didn't understand what he was saying. And he finally just said in verse 14, we'll just cut to the chase. He said, so then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. This is where I get a little confused. Wait a minute. If you only knew this part of the story, you would look at it and you would be a little confused because you would say, you heard that your friend was sick, and your response was, you delayed. And this messes up everything because you could have healed him, but you didn't, and now he's dead. And I want you to write down the problem that I see in our lives, and it's found right here in this passage. The problem in our iLife is death. I'll be honest, it's something we don't like talking about, something I don't like talking about. As a pastor, I'm probably around it much more than a lot of people, but it's hard, right? Death. We don't like to think about that. We like to think about, and I have a feeling when we started talking about what's your life goals, I bet you death didn't rank up there. I bet you didn't start saying, hey, right? You just don't like to think about it. And on a day like today, why would you bring something like that up? But there is something super important about being super honest about your reality. And a lot of times we paint a picture that's not real and we want to say positive words, but we're not being honest with reality. And when this comes, it will rock your world. And you will suddenly say, I don't know if I can believe this stuff. But today we're going to show you this solution. But before we can do that, we really have to talk through the problem, okay? So I'm going to show it from several different people's perspectives, and you may struggle with one or all these things, or your struggle might be a little different, but it all really has to do with this, that death came into the world as a result of sin. In the Garden of Eden, when man sinned against God, they brought in death. And ever since then, man dies spiritually from his sin, and he dies physically from his sin, and that's a result of that. And it's a problem. Okay, let's go forward. John 11, verse 16. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus. I always thought that was a strange name. Somebody this morning actually told me what Didymus means. It means he was a twin. Anyway, okay, that's just a side note. Don't know that you need to know that. And he said to the rest of his disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. So Thomas, his disciple, who is actually known as Doubting Thomas, he's pretty cynical, and he just basically said, hey, death is just a reality. We're just going to go, and by the way, we're all going to die anyway too. That's kind of what he resigned himself to. He didn't see it. And in fact, here's what I would tell you, that we're dead in our doubts, if you want to write that down. We're dead in our doubts, and we're going to do something with this list in a minute. And so what I like you to do is I like you to just write this down because you're going to need it. If you don't think you need it today and you go, I'm not experiencing anything bad right now, look around the room, look at somebody with some white in their hair and just ask, hey, do you think I'll need this? And I got a feeling they'll say, yeah, you do, because life will come around to you. It'll become reality, and you'll need this one day, okay? His problem was doubt. I'm glad to hear you guys are actually talking to people, and there's a lot of white hair in the room, okay? Or if they're bald, that works too. Okay, all right, we're done. Sorry. I don't know what that had to do with anything. All right, verse 17. Sorry. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, I'll pause there because if you're not Jewish, this won't make much sense. But the Jews believed in that time, there was kind of it was more of a myth, but they believed that the person really wasn't dead until after 3 days. That's what they really believed. When they've been in the grave for 3 days, that meant they're really, really dead. And they would typically do the grave close after 3 days. I think part of that was they probably just didn't have the medical things we had today, and so they wanted to make sure you're really dead before they sealed up the tomb and all that kind of stuff. But after 4 days, it's done, okay? You're really dead. And Jesus comes on the 4th day. You think there's a coincidence to that? You understand? He delayed on purpose. It's like the guy is really dead. That's why I'm telling you this is a big deal. Verse 18. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem. We'll come back to what it means, the foreshadowing of Jerusalem, but here's why it says it here. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. Verse 20. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. The thing you got to understand about these two sisters, we've seen them in other parts of the scripture. They're huge. Part of the gospel account, but they were friends of Jesus. And what you're going to see about them is they were sisters, but they couldn't be any different in personality. Anybody have that in your family where it's like like my brother's here today, we couldn't be more different in our personalities. I have a great personality, and I'm just playing. I'm playing. No, I'm messing. He can't really talk right now, so anyway. No, it's just different. It's not good or bad. One's more task-oriented, that's Martha. One's more people-oriented, that's Mary. And they handle things differently. And if you watch how Jesus handles them, he handles them differently. But Mary shut down. When this happened to Mary, she stayed in the house. Normally, Mary would be the one that would run out and see Jesus. If you've heard this story before, if you've heard about Mary and Martha, you might have heard the one where Martha was doing all the work and Mary was sitting at helping Jesus. Like she quit doing all her work and just hung out with Jesus. That's one of another story about them. Incredible. But this time, she isolated herself. Can I tell you what death does for a lot of us? We're dead in discouragement. And it makes us not connect. Discouragement drives it out of us, and some of us are dead in our discouragement. Okay, now we're going to do Martha. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, can you feel that? If you had been here, my brother would not have died. You want to underline, if you had been here? That had a little bit of bite to it, doesn't it? She's stating reality. We called you and you waited and it's been 4 days and you let him die. You healed everybody else. I'm not saying this is what's behind this statement, right? You healed everybody else and we're your friends. Where were you? Verse 22. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. She completes the thought by saying, I believe in you, but I don't understand you. Anybody there today? I believe in God, but I don't understand this. I want to believe. That's where she's at. Verse 23. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Verse 24. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus is giving her an answer that she doesn't understand. And I have a feeling there's somebody here today that God is giving you an answer that you don't understand. In fact, I would say there's some of us that have heard this story, but we really don't understand the purpose of this story, and we're about to give it, but she didn't understand. She's like, yeah, I know, Jesus, you're giving me the hope of the day of resurrection, but what do I do right now? You see, the day of resurrection is great, and I'm glad we have hope in that, but where is my hope right now? Because my brother is dead. You know what her problem is? Delay. She's dead in the delay. She doesn't understand. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been like, I don't know how much longer I can wait. I don't know how much longer I can wait on God to show up. And now he's dead. He's been dead for 4 days. And where are you? Where are you? This isn't exactly a light Easter message. I don't know how we ended up here, but I do know how we ended up here. Because some of us are going through our iLife. And I wouldn't go here today if life was fuzzy and nice and bubbles and cotton candy. That would be awesome. But how many of us know it's really not? And if we're not careful, we're going to put our ladder on the wrong wall only when we get to the top of our ladder of success, only to find out it's on the wrong wall. And today I'm going to help you get it on the right wall. Because if you got it on the right wall, you're going to have hope. But you got to get it. If you get it today, you're going to leave here with hope that can never be taken from you. If you don't, everything else is death. I'll explain that in a minute. I'll give you Jesus' answer first, though. Here's how Jesus answered. Jesus answered her, and he said, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. Verse 26, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? That's the question. And that's where we're going to end the passage today. The story's awesome. But if you're not careful, you're going to miss the point of the story, as I've missed it tons of times. Because the story ends in a super cool way. And we would love to think that that's the purpose of the story. But the purpose of the story is what he says right here. And what I would underline, what I would etch, what I would get tattooed on your arm if you could, okay, sorry, is I am the resurrection and the life. That's the point. If you don't understand that, you'll never get life. If you think it's about what's about to end at the end of the story, then you're never going to get life. You're going to be confused, and you're going to get to the hard parts of life, and you're going to do the things that we talked about at the beginning, and every single thing I said, except for getting the kids, well, getting the kids out of the house is pretty good too, but everything I said at the beginning about goals in life, they're all great things. There's nothing wrong with them, but they won't last. And the solution to death, the solution to our life's problem, the solution to our iLife is a space. It's Jesus. He is life. I am life. That's what he's saying. That's what's missing in our iLife. Jesus. You want to write it down? You think you might get it. I thought I got it. I'll be honest, I haven't always got it. And it's easy to get your eyes off of it. I can tell you if you have it or if you don't have it. If you have it, you won't be so frustrated. If you have it, you won't be so discouraged. If you have it, you won't doubt because you'll understand. But some of us, we don't, because what we have seen is just like the story. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the end of the story and then we're going to say, but my story didn't end that way. And today I want to help you with the solution. How does this work? How does Jesus being the resurrection and the life help us? And I want to explain it, and it might take some time for it to settle in, but once it does, it will grasp you and give you hope that will never end. So I know we went to kind of a dark place, but I want to give you some hope. The first place I want to start is this. I want to just go ahead and tell you the end of the story, okay? I thought about just saying, hey, you can read it for yourself. No. But I want to tell you the end of the story because it's super cool. Jesus comes to them, and after he says, I'm the resurrection and the life, and then he says, do you believe this? He's stating something to say, this is what you must believe to have hope in life. But it's not about what I'm about to do. I'm going to do what I'm getting ready to do to show you something so you will believe, but that's the point, is not about what I'm about to do. And if you think it is, you're going to be totally disillusioned. Some of you guys, that's right where you're at. What he does next is he says, open up the tomb. And they're all like, I know you're Jesus, but come on, man. He's been in the tomb for 4 days, and it's a little warm here. And let's just be honest. You know, Jews don't embalm bodies. The body stinks. I didn't make this up. This is exactly what the passage says. And Jesus says, open it. And they open it. And he says, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus gets up and rises from the dead in his grave clothes and comes out. It's awesome. And then they take his grave clothes out, and there's a whole message there for another day, but that's not what I want to tell you about today, because here's what I want to tell you. The reason why I say that's not the end of the story is what Jesus said is, he said, I am the resurrection and the life, and those that believe in me will never die. Well, if he's talking about Lazarus, he didn't do a very good job. You know why? Anybody met Lazarus? It's been 2,000 years. You know where his body is? Oh, I tell you, it's dust. Because he died again. He rose from the dead, and then he died. So it means it didn't last. He's saying you don't need a miracle. You need me. Do you understand that? There's a big difference. It isn't what you think you need. Sometimes we don't know what we need. Today is a paradigm shift that could change your life, but you got to understand the paradigm shift, or what you're going to think is, if he would only rise from the dead, then everything would be good. Let me tell you why I know that, because Jesus didn't spend the time going to the grave next door to it and bringing all the bodies out, which he could have done. He did it on purpose with a purpose, and he told you what it was, for the glory of God, so that people would believe in him. I am the resurrection and the life. It's important. Let me ask you a question. What do you need? What would fix your life right now? What did you bring in here with you today? What are your goals? Where is your ladder of success? Where is it? What are you climbing? What is it you're preparing for? Is it consumption? Nobody wants to talk about it like that, so let me say it differently. Is it, I'm trying to make a way for a better life, so I'm saving up all my money for a day that I can finally have a boat? Okay, that's me. Okay, I'm saving up money. I'm sorry. That's just never going to happen. I don't get paid enough. All right, I'm saving up money. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. I'm saving up money so I can have a retirement for my family. I'm saving up money so I can finally get something I desire. I'm saving it up so I can finally have this day, and you're not thinking it through clearly because it ends in death, right? And you go, it's not going to last. That's my point. And anybody ever saved up money only to realize the economy shifted and now you lost what you thought you owned, and now your whole life is messed up because you went, I invested and I spent my blood, sweat, and tears, and I spent 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and it ain't worth it. Right? You're feeling me, right? Or then I start consuming. If I could just get a little bit more, I'd finally be happy. Yet I've met people that have $10 million of net worth. And can I tell you something? They're not any happier than me. That's sad, ain't it? I keep thinking, though, if I had it, I would be happy, right? No, you won't. Money doesn't fix your problems. Ask anybody that's rich, they'll tell you. They don't even think of themselves as rich. We're the richest people that have ever lived in the history of mankind, yet you're no more fulfilled, right? In your hand, in your pocket, I guarantee you most of us have a smartphone that has done more. They tell me that we have more technology in our pocket than it took to land a man on the moon. Are you happy? Do you have problems? Are you fixed? Maybe it's accomplishment. If I could do and sacrifice myself for a worthy cause, then it would be worthwhile because mankind would remember me, right? Is that what you think? You know, I did a funeral for a guy when we first started the church that was the most decorated military person in the state of Virginia. There probably won't be another one like him. He was from the Great Generation, and he fought in World War II. In fact, he fought in every engagement until he was too old. He had everything but the Congressional Medal of Honor and actually qualified for that. Can I tell you how much people remember him? I'm just telling you, somebody who does a lot of funerals. Accomplishments will go, and they'll forget you in less than a half a generation. By the way, even if they remember you, what good does it do you? You're not painting a nice picture, John. I'm not saying it's a bad goal. I'm saying it doesn't last. Maybe you're thinking, hey, I'm going to get real spiritual in it. I'm not going to give my life to addiction or party and all this. I'm going to invest in my relationships because they will last. Is that right? Let me ask you a question about your relationships. I know I'm going deep today, but I have to, because if you're not careful, some of you guys, you know exactly what it feels like because you've been disillusioned by this and nobody ever talks about this, but we're talking about it today because it's important. How many people that your life is all about your relationships, your family, only to find out your relationship busted up and now it doesn't work? Or maybe you went to the end, right? Anybody old enough to do this? Some people are young enough to do this. You went to the very end, and what happens? The person you invested in, they died. That's hard, isn't it? The person you invested your life in died. And now you don't know what to do with life. This isn't how I thought it would be. I saved up all this money to spend time with you, and you're not here. I didn't factor that in because I never thought it would change. And you're finding the void of life, right? You know what you're finding? You're finding what we just talked about in reverse, right? It starts with what? It starts with God delayed. He didn't do what I thought he would do. Where were you, God? Right? Anybody asking? He delayed. We're dead in delay. And then we're dead in discouragement because when he delayed, something bad happened. And now I'm discouraged. And now I doubt that this is even real. Anybody ever done that? If this is who God is, if God lets this happen, then I don't even know if I believe in that God, right? Because it's all death, right? You live long enough, believe me, I'm a pastor. You know what I get to watch? I get to watch from beginning to end, right? You know what I mean by that? I get to be there when people get married, which is the end. No, I'm just playing. No, I get to be there. Sorry, it was getting really tense, so I just had to say something, okay? It isn't, right? It's beautiful. And then they got little babies, like my nephew's here today, and his baby's in the nursery. Well, it's not a baby now, he's walking around, but baby, right? You get to see it, right? I mean, I got to perform their wedding, and then now we got a baby. You know what else I get to see? I get to see the end. Some old, some young. I stand by the graveside in the void. And we try to add some perspective. But people are going, I don't know what to do with this. I know. And Jesus is coming, and he's saying, I want to give you the solution. It's not that all these other things are not good things. It's that they are not the end in and of itself. They are not the source. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. I want you to get it today, because if you don't, you're going to be disillusioned. You're going to be disillusioned by life. If you don't believe that, wait around long enough and things will come for you and you'll be, where is God? Because you're thinking he's got to work everything out in this planet. Well, he did it for Lazarus, but it didn't last. What lasts? What can I put everything into that's a rock that will never be shaken? And he's saying, that's me. I am the resurrection and the life. You need me. You see, the resurrection is not just an event. It is an event. The day that Jesus rose from the dead is an incredible event that changed the history of mankind. But it's not an event, it's a person. It's the person of Jesus Christ that you need more than anything. It is the only thing that will last. It's the only thing that will not have void. And I want to show you there's more to this passage than you think. And if you think it's about a miracle, you couldn't be more wrong. Oh, he did the miracle to prove who he was. But it's way more than a miracle. It is about getting your life straight with the right source, with the right why. And if you get it, you will have hope no matter what circumstances you have. If you don't, death will come for you. Doubt will come for you. Discouragement will come for you. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know because that's where you are. I want to explain his statement though. There's only a few people there that day, and they weren't followers of Jesus that got his statement. They were actually his enemies, and they understood exactly what he meant. In fact, after he said that, they didn't even pay attention to the raising of the dead of Lazarus. You know what they paid attention to? The statement that he said. You know what he said? I am. They got it. We're not Jewish, so a lot of us don't get it. I am is huge in the Bible. We go all the way back to the book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 1, it says that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it said that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And if you read that, what you understand is it means the void. It means the chaos. And when he looked at the chaos, he said, let there be light. And there was light. That's Genesis 1. John chapter 1, the passage where we're talking about reading this week, is where you're going to start. It's pretty awesome. It parallels, and he introduces Jesus, but instead of going to Bethlehem, he goes back to the beginning of time, and he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he even makes a reference to the light. It's a direct parallel. And he's saying, you know what he's saying? He's saying Jesus is God. That's exactly what he said. He said, Jesus is the one who spoke, let there be light. He is the Word. I am the Word. Do you understand what he's saying? Oh, they believed, they understood, because that's when they started to plot to kill him. Because they said, you're saying you're God. You're saying you're I am. You know how they heard it? The Jews had heard it in Exodus chapter 3 when the great deliverer Moses was called. Moses in ancient times was called when the children of Israel were slaves in Egypt. God sent word to Moses. In fact, he spoke to Moses out of a burning bush that wouldn't burn up. And Moses comes and he's talking to him and he says, I want you to go and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And Moses says, no. He said, why? Who would I tell him sent me? And you know what Jesus says? You tell them, I am sent you. You starting to see it? In the book of Revelation, if you want to see this come full course, Jesus describes himself in the book of Revelation chapter 1 and Revelation 22. He says this, the beginning of Revelation and the end of Revelation. I would say this is pretty important. He said, I am Jesus. I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, who was and is to come, the Almighty. He says it twice in the book of Revelation. I'd say that's pretty important. And he said it in John chapter 11. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. I just wanted you to see it so you'd understand who he is. Now, you might be wondering, what does that have to do with me? That's a great question. That's great. But what has it got to do with me in my life right now? Everything. You see, in John 3:16, you want to know what it says? It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. That's what it has to do with you. And what does this story have to do with me? Because weeks after he did this with Lazarus, everybody wonders, why did he do this with Lazarus? It was a foreshadowing of what was about to occur. That Jesus would enter Jerusalem. And that same week, they crucified him. Died for the sins of the world. And on the cross, he bore all of the pain and all of the sin for all of time, that he might pay for that. You know why he did it? To tell you that he loves you right where you are. In your discouragement. In your doubt. In your death. Jesus walks on the death. And on the third day, after he died, now you know the significance of the third day for the Jew, huh? He walked out of the tomb, proving that he was God. And in the book of Ephesians, it says that the same power that it took to raise Christ from the dead is available to us through him. Because he's saying to you, I have the power of both death, hell, and the grave. I could forgive you if you want me to. I am the resurrection. You go, John, are you trying to explain all my pain away? Nope, I would never do that. I'm simply telling you this, that you will never find a solution in any other thing. Everything else leads to death. You think that it won't, but the more you consume, the more you want. Is that true? All addictions are made that way. Some of us are addicts and we understand that, right? That the more I get, the more I want, and I can never be full. I cannot fulfill the void. Some of us, it's accomplishment, but you can't accomplish enough, can you? You want to be remembered, but you won't. And even if you are, it won't help you. Some of us, it's relationships, but they don't last. I'm not saying these are bad things. I'm saying just what Jesus said. He said in Matthew chapter 6, he taught us to pray, and after that, he said, I can see you're worried about many things. But if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, then all these other things will be added to you as well. I'm not saying God doesn't do miracles. I'm not saying you give up on this life. I'm saying it doesn't last. What are you basing everything on? You see, God loves you right where you are, even in your doubt. There's a line from a movie called The Count of Monte Cristo that I love the most. This guy had went through some horrible times, and he'd been in jail and beaten and all this kind of stuff, and he comes across this guy, this old man that helps him, and the guy keeps telling him about God, and he says, I don't believe in God. And he said, that's okay. God still believes in you. I don't want you to misunderstand my theology. I'm not saying that you're saved because of that. What I'm telling you is, in your doubt, God still loves you. From the cross, it's as though, if I could get out of the way, Jesus would come out and he would stand on this stage and he would say, no matter where you come from or what you've done, I love you. And even if you reject me, even if you codify that for hell for all of eternity, you can't go there without understanding that I love you. I am the resurrection and the life. You may not understand, but see, here's the thing I've learned. as a person that thinks they're intellectual. All the answers in the world aren't going to help you. You think they will. You think if God would come down on high and finally explain everything to you, by the way, he's never going to do that. But let me ask you a question. Because of the cross of Christ, could you trust him with what you don't understand? You understand this is personal for Jesus? After he died, he rose from the dead, and then he spent 40 days appearing before people, so there's eyewitness testimony that he is alive. Those same people died martyrs' deaths because they said, recant or we'll kill you. And they said, we will never recant Jesus. That's why we believe today. Where did he go? After 40 days, he ascended back into heaven, leaving the disciples to start the church. You know where he went? In the book of Hebrews, we know he went and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. The right hand. You know what that is? God is spirit. He doesn't have a hand. It represents the power. If you said the right hand of the king, you mean power. The right hand of God means all power. And he sits down, meaning that his work is done, but he's still doing something. What is he doing? He's praying for you. He knows that in his delay, you're discouraged. And he knows that in his delay and in your discouragement that you doubt. And he's praying for you that you might find him. And when you do, all the other things will be added. Nothing else will last in this life. And it says in the book of Revelation, he says, I stand at the door, Revelation 3. He said, I stand at the door and I knock. You see, it's not you seeking him, it's the other way around. He said, I know you don't understand. But let me ask you a question. Even though you don't understand, is this enough? Is my death on the cross that I paid in my blood enough for you to trust me with the things you don't understand? Because I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me will never die. We have hope that goes beyond this world. There's a lot of horrible things in this world. And no matter what you attach to, it will end in death except for one thing, Jesus Christ. And he's offering himself to you. There is no one that has ever loved you more. And what better day to receive him than Easter Sunday, the day of resurrection? That's what we celebrate. This story is not about Lazarus. It's about Jesus. And he's saying, I love you right where you are and too much to leave you there. So it's not me that invites you into a relationship with Jesus. It's Jesus. He's praying for you right now at the right hand of the throne of God. And he's calling you to him. You may not understand everything, but you understand enough that in a minute when we pray, I'm going to invite you into a relationship with him. If you come into a relationship with him or you're in relationship with him, then here's what I want to do. I want to invite you to one more thing. If you have a church home, just know we're so glad you were here with us today and we're praying for your church home. But if you don't, then here's what I'd like to invite you to. Not a big thing, just one thing to do. Come back next week. Next week, we're going to continue this series. I got a lot more, believe it or not. Jesus has a lot more to say about that I am. What does it mean? We're going to go further with it next week, so you're not going to miss that. The second thing is this. I want you to connect with a few people. So after church next Sunday, for anybody that's brand new or anybody wants to bring somebody that's new, we're going to have a dinner called Connection Point. And they got a great meal plan, and we're going to be here, and I'll spend a little bit of time with you. We got some leaders for you to meet. It'll probably take about 1 hour after service, and you'll get to meet a couple people, and you'll finally take a next step. None of this works. Please don't think we're going to do something for you. Don't come to Connection Point without Jesus. It won't help you, right? But if you want to receive Jesus today, that is the next step. Come, be part. Let us help you with your faith. Let us help you understand what it means to be a disciple of his. So the easiest way to sign up for it is right in the seat in front of you. In fact, if you don't mind, I know this is kind of personal. You don't have to fill it out unless you want to, but I want to make sure you have every opportunity. If everybody would just grab one of the cards that's in front of you or behind you and just hold it up, just to make sure I know you got it. That's life, man. All you got to do is fill it out and turn it into the ushers on the way out today. If you don't want to, that's okay. I understand. We're not trying to press you to do that. But if you want to take a next step, just check on there. I want to attend Connection Point. And I'm telling you, it can change your life. Please don't walk out these doors without it. Because here's what I know. Some of us are going to think, I'm going to wait and do it later. Can I tell you something from experience for myself? I kept saying that. And you know what I did? I would leave church on Easter, and then I'd come back the next Easter. Then I'd leave church on Easter, and I'd come back the next Easter. And I did that for a long, long time. Can I ask you not to do that? That today, fill that out. You can always say no later. But if you'll do that now, let me tell you what it'll do. We'll send you a card just to remind you, because Satan's going to get a hold of you this week. You're going to say, hey, I made a commitment to God this week. And then he's going to come, and you're going to go, yeah, I don't know what happened. It's him. So I'm just asking you to be proactive. Fill it out and turn that into the ushers on the way out. If I didn't know this to be a fact, we've been doing this for years. Believe me when I tell you, the people that make it through, that's where you're going to be at. So here's what I want to do. I want to pray for you today. If you've never received Jesus today, when I pray, please accept him. It doesn't take words, just whatever you want to pray about, and then turn that card into the ushers on the way out today. I can't be happier that you spent Easter with us today. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's stand for prayer.